Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Press Box. John Carter, and today we kind of I think a special treat. What we have here today is we're going to get the PA announcers from East China Stadium, both the our kind of the long-term PA announcers, both St. Clair and Marine City, and then we're going to have the new announcers come on and kind of share some of their experiences. And let me introduce, first of all, Fred Shaw. Fred has been the voice of St. Clair Saints for 38 years at East China. And Fred, thanks for coming on the show. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
And Dave Scheel, who is for Marine City 31 years. So Fred's got a couple on you. But,
yes, he does.
I mean, maybe should have hung on just a little bit longer to tie that up, right?
Well, you add in his radio. And
that's right, so it equals out, right?
Me up.
So guys, and you know, it's amazing the kind of experience and really the breadth of knowledge you have about it. We were talking a little bit before the show started. And Dave, maybe talk about how you started out with this and got to be the PA announcer.
Well, I started out actually doing a little bit of radio.
All right.
And this was because Marine City at the time, we were playing back at the old Ward Cottrell Field on Ward Street behind the high school, like the Saints did behind St. Clair High School. And the lights were no longer working and the poles had dry rot, so they were playing about 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and some parents couldn't make it. So this little local country western station, WSMA, on 26 Mile Road, just before you got to King Road, decided they would do the games on radio, and people that were kind of coming in close to the range where they could pick up the station could hear the games. So I did that with a guy named Jack Dragmeller, who was an excellent play-by-play guy, and I just did some color, and I've always enjoyed football. I played high school football, wasn't good enough to play college football, and so I did that for about 4 years, and then transitioned over into the stadium announcing.
That's amazing. And Fred, what about you? That's 38 years. That brings us back a long way as well.
It is a long time, but what happened to me was for 8 years I was an assistant football coach at the high school, ranging from freshman, JV head coach to assistant coach at the varsity level, and I love football. And but I got the opportunity to be the girls basketball coach, and that season coincided with football, so that made it a difficult decision for me, but I wanted to be a varsity coach, and so I took that girls basketball job. Glad I did, but I also wanted to stay connected to the football program. And so I thought, well, how can I do that? Well, okay, I'll go down and announce. I don't think anybody had ever done it before, but we set up a mic, and we had this football field built by the Booster Club down behind the high school. And it had a great big old rocking press box in it where if the fans really got excited, you could feel the vibration up there. But I had a great time with it, and that's how I got started.
So talk about the transition to East China, which is really a beautiful stadium. I mean, state of the art. But what kind of challenges does that provide for you when going from one to the other?
It was like from the penthouse to the outhouse to the penthouse, because our press box was very similar. In fact, I did a couple games on radio back behind the high school in St. Clair too, and we were all pretty well cropped in together, and this was spacious, and you know, they had a pretty fancy PA system and whatnot. So it was a pleasure, and so it was really a nice transition. It was a step up.
And Dave always left me the referee's signal so we could coordinate with those guys make all these signals out there, and you know, you're like, oh, I haven't seen that one before. But we'd keep each other posted on that with a window right next to us.
Sure, that's kind of neat. So talk about, and you mentioned referees, but the challenges of doing the PA for football are quite a bit more than, say, for basketball. You have 5 players on a team. Yeah. How did you prepare for doing this, Fred?
Well, first of all, the athletics directors, bless their hearts, always provided us with a roster. So you knew you were going to have that roster sitting in front of you when you got to the field. Then I would go down on the field and say, I don't want to get this kid's name wrong. And like the Dearborn kids would come in with no vowels in their name. So you'd have to go down and say, Coach, how do you say this one? And phonetically you'd write it out.
Sure.
Another one would be, there'd be 4 kids that had 81 on their back.
Yep.
So that was a challenge that, you know, that you would have to overcome. And of course, the muddy numbers, you can't see them real well. So you had to have a really great spotter. And I had one. He was with me the whole time, Joe Holliday. He was terrific.
How about you? What kind of preparation do you have to do for the teams as well?
Pretty similar to what Fred said. We got the rosters and always tried to get the starting lineup and try to get the starting lineup of the away team, which is sometimes a trick because some coaches don't want to offer it. And, you know, do a little highlighting so you kind of knew who your key players were on offense, who you're probably going to be calling most frequently, and then also on defense. But, you know, occasionally I'd get a name wrong. Not very often for the most part, but usually, I think it happened twice, and both times, because you can get into the press box pretty easily at East China Stadium, a mother would come up and said, hey, it's like pronounced this way. You know? Okay, I'll get it right next time. I apologize.
Now, Marine City, with their traditional orange and black and orange uniforms, I always thought it would be hard to read the numbers. Was that ever a problem?
Oh, it is. It is hard to read. And, you know, back in the early days, I guess, not really at East China, but maybe back in the 70s, they wore stadium numbers on the jerseys. Evidently, that's not in style anymore.
And
so,
it made it a lot better, for sure.
Yeah. So really, you know, your spotter is real important. And I had some good ones, but unfortunately, they all passed away. I started with Ray Shackett, who was a custodian at the school district. He was a wonderful guy. He did it till he was about 85. Billy Ray Thompson, who was a fantastic athlete at Marine City in the 70s. He unfortunately passed untimely. And then I had Coach Glodich's dad, John Glodich, helping me out until he passed a couple years ago. And
that's it. Your spotter is so important to you.
Yeah.
And if he screws it up, you look bad.
Yeah.
And and like you said, they will be at the door.
Yeah, they will let you know if you got it wrong.
21 wasn't even on the field.
Yeah.
So what did you like best about doing it for all those years?
Oh, I just enjoyed football. I mean, I wanted to stay connected to football. It made me feel like a part of the team still. Football was in my blood. I played high school football and I loved it, and didn't play it in college. Did play basketball, but not football.
How about you, Dave? Marine City's had so many great teams over the years. Not to say St. Clair has them, but certainly Marine City's well known for it. How about you? What was the main connection that you had?
Well, you know, I've always loved the game, and so I was happy to do it when I got an opportunity to switch over and do that. I was good friends with Jerry Warkentine, who had gone to Marine City High School and come back and worked the program up to where in 1985 we got into the playoffs for the first time, and it was a kind of a special celebration for the town, and we got to play at this old Atwood Stadium in Flint, which was an old minor league baseball stadium. Yeah. And it was fun.
They had artificial turf there, didn't they? We played there.
They had the first generation artificial turf. Yeah. And a kid who was on the Divine Child team that beat us in the semifinals is now the head coach of the New York Giants, Pat Shermer.
Wow, that's amazing.
That is something.
No, the connections you make are pretty, that's really one of the reasons you do it, right? Yeah. So you mentioned that, but tell me some of your other big thrills that you've had over the last 30 plus years.
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of them because they've had some key games.
Oh, boy.
And we've always been kind of a team versus talent operation, which was their motto in 2013. But we were in a situation in 2007, it was, I don't know if it was the regional final or maybe the game before, but we were down to Flint Powers 28-0 with about 3 minutes left in the second quarter. And so you're pretty much thinking in your head, this is it, we're not going to make it. And we had Brendan Kay at quarterback, who probably is arguably one of the more talented players we've ever had.
Sure.
And he threw a touchdown pass, so we went off the field at 28-7. Now, I didn't know this, but I found out later. And Brendan I never thought of as a real demonstrative kid, but evidently in the locker room at halftime, he looked at the seniors and said, if you block for me, we're going to win this game. We won 38-28.
That's amazing.
And we had to come back in the second half. It was unbelievable.
Great story. Fred, what about you? What were some of your big thrills?
You know, some of my fondest memories are early in the football. When I first started, Ben Vitakevich was the head coach and did a tremendous job and was kind of overlooked as a great coach. But we would have made, in today's format, we would have made, the 7 years I was his assistant, we would have made the playoffs, 6 of those.
Yeah.
And Ben was hilarious. I mean, I can tell you some funny stories about him that we can't say on TV. But he had this ability to transition from being the the head coach and you bowed down to one of the boys.
Right.
And it was like, I always enjoyed being around him. He was such a great guy.
So what about on the downside? Can you remember some of your bigger goofs and what happened?
Well, probably just mispronouncing a couple names here or there. But I'll tell you, the toughest part was my son, who now is a defensive coach for Marine City, coached at Clintondale for 13 years.
All right.
And we were in the same division as them, and we had some battles with Clintondale.
Yeah.
And, you know, when your blood is on one side and the team that you've supported for so long is on another, I don't know if you ever had that one happen, but that's a toughie, you know? I mean, you're sitting there thinking, I can't win on this one. Whoever loses, I'm going to feel bad about it, you know? And so that was always a tough thing to do. But it's kind of nice when he came to Marine City, so now I don't have that conflict anymore.
Well, I'll tell you right now that the toughest job you have as an announcer is when it's a senior day or, you know, parents' night, and you have a list in front of you. And you, you know, it's coordinated with the athletic director, and as you announce them, they keep going, come on, go faster, go slower, slow down, slow down. That probably is the most difficult part of the job.
Yeah.
And there's 3 or 4 of those jobs, 3 or 4 of those nights where you have to introduce the cheerleading squad, the football team graduates and their parents, and it's hard.
Yeah.
But the kind of thing that happens is if you don't put your finger on it as you read it and move down like that, and you've got one finger on the mic and one finger on, you might miss one, and then that's an embarrassment. And you're looking down, there's still one left after you got all done. So.
All right. So after all these years, Dave, why pull the plug this year? What's changed that you wanted to go on?
Well, I was starting to think, like Freddie was just talking about, when you do those parents' night things, and I've been lucky enough to have pretty good eyesight, but I use the cheaters. And when you're using the cheaters and you're doing those parents' nights, and I mean, there's times, and a lot of times, you know, a child may have a different last name than a parent, or sometimes you've got 4 parents going out because the parents have been divorced.
Right, sure.
And so you're really doing this, and again, because they usually do it before the game starts, and the coaches kind of want it done, and you want to do a nice job with it. But you're also concerned that, oh, they got warm-ups to do and all this kind of thing. So I was thinking, you know, maybe I'm getting a little bit slow on the trigger here. Maybe it's time to give some other person some time for some fun, because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I think I could still do it, but you kind of want to get out before you start making a bunch of mistakes.
Yeah, that's exactly my reason. The last couple of years were kind of a struggle for me, and I thought, well, you know, there must be a shelf life to this, this announcing.
It's not like a Supreme Court appointment, you know?
It's not a lifetime appointment.
That's right.
So I thought, when my grandson plays his last game as a senior,
and that was Ian Jansen.
That was Ian Jansen. I think I'm going to bow out. And so I wanted to make it through his senior year, and I did. And I'd be happy to turn the reins over to Phil. You know.
Well, that's a great segue. Let's bring on Fred Winzer and Phil Russell, and we'll do the second part of the show with all 4 guys here. Well, welcome back, everybody. John Carter, and we're joined now by Phil Russell and Fred Winzer. Guys, thanks for coming on. And Fred, you've been listening to the first part of the show. What's your reaction to taking over for this legend?
Well, I will tell you that it was kind of shocking, and for me, because to even be thought of is kind of a warm feeling for me, because I'm a huge Mariner fan and always have been. But what really kind of nostalgic about Dave here is the fact that I grew up with Fred. My dad was a football coach at St. Clair from 1976 to 1996. And to be on the sidelines or in the crowd and listen to Fred go, and then when I got to be old enough to play football myself and listen to Dave, you know, it's kind of fun to listen to. And hearing Dave all those years, I'm like, man, that'd be kind of fun to do. And then I got the text from Andy, actually, his son, and said, hey, would you be interested in taking over for my dad in the press box? And I'm like, wow, yes, that would be awesome. I would love to do that.
How about you, Phil? How'd you get kind of roped into this?
Well, I started at Channel 6 in 1994 when the channel started.
I was going to say, so you're one of the originals then.
Thinking back, I did the play-by-play for the football team in 94 or 95. We can't quite remember which one. And then Sandy Rutledge asked me, a couple months ago, and I said, yeah, I said, I think, I can do that. And then he says, well, we'll wait a month or two and then I'll get back to you. And then he asked again, and I said, sure. I said, I go to all the games. I said, that sounds good. And then he says, you do realize it's a 38-year contract. And I said, no. I said, not for me. I said, we're going week to week. If we can handle it week to week, then I'm a yes.
Oh, that's amazing. So you've been mentioned, both of you guys, obviously very, very involved in the programs and other things. What are you kind of looking forward to this new job, Phil?
I like being around the players and the teams. I went to a few of the practices. They had the scrimmage on this past Saturday where I was down there, and actually getting down on the field is the big thing for me. I've played a lot of sports and been in a lot of big situations, but there's still nothing like getting down on a football field and being a part of the action.
And that fall kind of feeling that you can just tell when it's time to play football
yes,
again, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Dave, again, what kind of things have you done to prepare for this new position?
Well, I will tell you, getting with Dave, we met with I met with the athletic director, met with Dave at a coffee place downtown Marine City just to talk about what it was about. And the thing is I've done some announcing as far as like for baseball games, obviously a lot different than football. But I've been around the game my whole life because of my dad. I played until I suffered a knee injury, but the thing is I was a 3-sport athlete in my mind. And I did coach football at St. Clair from 1989 to 1995 with my dad, so that was also kind of a good thing. So I've always been around the game, enjoyed it, and he and I talk all the time on the phone. He lives in Florida now, and we just kind of talk about the game in situations, and it kind of is, to me, it's going to kind of help me with the transition and doing the press box announcing.
Okay. And Phil, what about you? What kind of preparation have you done to get ready for the season?
I actually met with Coach Bishop last night to go over a few things. We had a nice discussion about some of the players and what their plan of attack was for the year, but he also said there's a lot of things I couldn't say about the year. But and I've been to some practices and things like that, so I've gotten down. I know all the coaches. I know Coach Griffin real well, and Coach Mann, Coach Tapman. I know all those guys, so it's real easy for me to talk with them just about who's sticking out and who's going to be playing where and those sorts of things.
Fred, what kind of challenges do you see coming into this? What do you kind of, not anxious about, but want to get right?
Well, first of all, number one, when you're filling the shoes of a legend of the voice, and of course Phil's probably feeling the same way with doing it with Fred. You want to sound enthusiastic. You don't want to sound like a homer, as we talked about. But to be able to speak clearly, be able to get things right. When it comes to this, I want it to sound good, and I want people to to appreciate the fact that Dave did pick me as a person of interest, and I don't want to let him down. And of course I want to call some games where I can come back and when I pass it on to somebody and I can tell them, well, back in 2020, there was this game. I want to be able to do that myself. So, the biggest thing for me is just preparing. And the thing is I'm comfortable knowing the game. It's just going to be getting used to being in the box and having to make a call every single time there's a play that ends. Mm-hmm.
What about you, Phil? What are some of the things you're concerned about getting right as well?
The big thing is not sounding too much like a homer, and making sure that everybody's names are pronounced right, like mm-hmm. Coach Mr. Shaw said about the phonemic awareness, working with the home coach and the opposing coach, and just making sure that I'm not talking when the mic is hot.
Oh boy,
is going to be a big thing. I hope there's a big light or something so that I know when it's hot. Or
it's a push button.
Yes.
The proper assumption is it's always hot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is the assumption you have to
right.
make whether you're on PA or TV. It's always hot.
Yes.
And you have to make sure the guys behind you aren't piping in on it with some kind of a comment on because they can be heard in the mic as well.
Oh, absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
So I mean, you guys have both said you've been to games and so on. Phil, what are you taking from Fred's style that you want to incorporate in your own? What are you looking to do kind of your own approach to it?
Well, I know he's always had the key play, take out your keys, and doing those sorts of things. So I've been doing a little research that I might have to try to incorporate on Thursday night, just to kind of have somewhat of a surprise for everybody on how I'm going to move forward throughout the game.
How about you, Fred?
Well, I've actually I've talked to a few people, and I've gave them some ideas of what I want to do when the kickoff starts, and I'm like, darn, Fred Shaw stole the best thing ever. Growing up in here, and everybody up for the kickoff, and I'm like, I will have something that everybody will kind of get used to. It's nothing too dramatic, but it'll be something that everybody will know about, and of course might do some things when there's a first down, things like that, just to kind of give you a little hint.
So you guys are both taking over from what I'll call very noticeable or memorable voices, and kind of that voice of God as you're pulling up to the stadium. You can hear the PA announcer from a long way off. It's that deep, sonorous voice.
Yes.
Phil, have you been practicing in front of the mirror? Has anybody kind of had to listen a little bit as you've gone through things?
I have not done that, but I have been on a microphone throughout being a principal and administrator, so I have been on a microphone. But I don't know if I've talked differently when I'm on the microphone or not. Nobody has told me that, so I'm not quite sure if I do or if I don't.
How about you, Fred? You been practicing it all?
Well, I'm not shy when someone hands me a microphone. I mean, I do all the singing and stuff like that, and I do a lot of stuff for my wife's programs up at the Port Huron Rec Department, things like that. But yeah, it's gonna be tough to Dave's voice is outstanding. And,
He's going to do fine.
And and I'm sure I'll find my feet, and I'm really super excited about it though.
So if you had to kind of encapsulate, what's your goal for this year? What do you want to accomplish this year?
To not have a huge mistake.
Okay.
That's the biggest one, is not to have a huge mistake, and just make sure that that everybody's eyes are on the field and not on me. That I'm just kind of in the background, and that the crowd is watching the kids.
How about you, Fred?
I agree with what Phil said. I think it's about the kids. It's about what the coaches do, and getting names right, and eliminating the mistakes as minimal as possible, for sure. And of course, to have fun.
Yeah, because it is high school sports, and it's
Heck,
supposed to be fun, right?
Yes.
Best thing ever.
Absolutely.
Great
Well, guys, I really want to thank you. This has been a fun show, kind of a different take for us than maybe what we normally do. But Fred and Dave, Phil Russell, Fred Shaw, as always, first of all, congratulations and just a tremendous job for Dave and Fred Shaw. A great legacy you're leaving, and people are going to remember you, and it's really a kind of neat memory to have. And to Phil and Fred, good luck this
Thank you
next
very
year.
much.
Have fun, and we'll see you at the stadium.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
All right, everybody, that's it for Press Box tonight. This is John Carter, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye, everybody.